Herkese merhaba. Ben Alex, 35 yaşındayım. İngilizim. Ben 3 yıldır İstanbul'da oturuyorum ve İstanbul çok severim. Yemek çok lezzetli, insanlar çok hoş. Ben Cambly'de eğitmenim. So now I want to talk a little bit about the differences and similarities between Toefl and Ielts. Essentially, they measure the same thing, they test the same thing. Your ability to speak, write, read, listen to English. But they do it in slightly different ways, and you should prepare for these exams slightly differently. Let's look a little bit at the differences between Toefl and Ielts. Okay? Like we said, they test the same thing, but in different ways. So the Toefl exam is computer-based, while Ielts is paper-based. The Toefl exam is more geared towards American accents, whereas Ielts is more British or international English. Toefl is all multiple choice questions. Okay, when you answer the questions, they will all be multiple choice. Whereas Ielts has a more varied answer section. Okay, you might be asked to finish a sentence or summarize a paragraph. This difference in answers might make Toefl seem easier, but actually sometimes the questions in Toefl are a little bit harder. They have something called an integrated section where you have to use multiple skills at the same time. Okay? Whereas Ielts, the questions are all separate. Speaking, listening, writing, reading are all in separate parts. In general, Toefl is slightly longer than the Ielts test. Now this is recently changed. Toefl has been made shorter, and this is something I want to cover. All the most recent changes of Toefl. This is 1st of August 2019. They made the exam a bit shorter. Okay, so this is less important now. What about what's the same? Well, obviously they all test listening, reading, writing, and speaking. Also, the price is about the same to take a test. There might be a slight difference, but in general, it's about the same, and their availability is the same. If you live in a large city, like I do, in Istanbul, you can take Toefl or Ielts anywhere. But this is something you might want to check. So, like I said, this year, on August the 1st, 2019, Toefl was changed. What were those changes? Well, the most significant change was that it was reduced in time from 3.5 hours to 3 hours, which is only slightly longer than Ielts. They took out some of the questions, they took out some of the texts, okay? They didn't change the exam, they just changed the format to make it slightly less difficult in terms of concentration, in terms of number of questions you have to respond to. But the actual texts themselves stayed the same. Why did they do this? Well, first of all, it was a business decision. Less people were taking Toefl, okay? So now, with it being a little bit shorter, it's closer to Ielts. It means that people are less scared to take the Toefl exam. Imagine sitting, practicing a foreign language for 3.5 hours. It's not easy. Now it's a bit shorter, it's a little bit more manageable. One of the biggest changes that they introduced on August 1st, 2019 was the My Best score. If you take the Ielts exam, they add up all your scores for reading, writing, etc. And this is your final score. And if you want to improve your score, you have to take the exam again. My Best score allows you to take multiple exams and take the best score from each section from that exam. So let's say in my first exam I had a very good listening result, okay, 100. But in the next two exams I really struggled with the listening, okay. It means I can pick and choose the best results from each section. So you would think overall you should be able to get a higher score if you have the money. Of course, you're paying each time you take the exam. So if money is not an issue, Toefl is definitely the exam for you, okay? It also means it takes a little bit of pressure off, okay? I know taking an exam is a little bit scary. But if you've got this thought in the back of your mind, okay, if I mess up, if I make too many mistakes, if I don't understand a question, at least not the whole exam is lost, okay? Maybe you get a very low speaking result, but the rest of your exam is fine, is good. It means next time, you just need to focus on the speaking. It takes off so much pressure. So, let's talk specifically about advantages of the new Toefl exam. So first of all, it's a little bit shorter, which means it's less exhausting. It's also a little bit less complicated because you have less questions. Another advantage, like we said, is you can take your best scores. On the flip side, the disadvantages, okay? Yes, the exam is shorter, but that means that you've got less chance to show your English. It means that each mistake is magnified. Every time you make a mistake, it's a higher percentage of the points that you're losing. So it may seem like an advantage to have a shorter exam, but it means that you've got less chance to show them how hard you've worked to prepare for it. And the question you're probably asking yourself, did the exam get easier? Well, the people who make the exam say no. They say simply shorter, and I would agree. You prepare for it in the same way, you use the same resources, the texts haven't changed, it's still testing your language, it's still testing all 4 disciplines, it hasn't got easier, but it has perhaps got more manageable. Another question that I'm asked very frequently, should I take IELTS or should I take Toefl? Okay, what's the difference? Well, we've talked about the differences. Now I'm here to give you some advice. Which one should you choose? IELTS is more geared towards British universities. So if you're applying for a master's degree, IELTS is definitely something to consider. If you know you're going to be applying to an American university, for example, for a master's, Toefl is definitely the way to go. If you want to give yourself the best chance of getting to the best universities, IELTS Academic is the way to go. There's no one right, you should always take Toefl, you should always take IELTS. It depends on the situation. What about talking to a computer screen? Okay, in the Toefl exam, it's all computer based. Now, while you may be used to writing emails and the writing section may be easier, how easy is it to answer a question and talk for a minute or longer to a computer screen with no feedback, no one looking at you and nodding? Again, that's something very personal. A lot of people in Turkey are actually scared to speak English with a native speaker. Okay, so maybe in this case, Toefl is better for you. If you have confidence issues, you can be more relaxed. On the flip side, I know a lot of people like to have a friendly face in front of them when speaking. Okay, the difficulty of the questions, the way you are marked on the answers doesn't change, but you feel more relaxed, and that's also an important point to consider. Another thing to think about is that when marking your English, Toefl cares a little bit more about structure of the answers, while IELTS cares about the level of your English. So if in your native language, you're extremely organized in your thoughts, you're very good at writing essays, but you struggle a little bit with language itself, English, you could go towards IELTS. If your English is very good, but you're not good at preparing for exams or you struggle with structure, maybe Toefl is the way to go for you. So in conclusion, should I take IELTS or Toefl? And the answer is, it doesn't matter, okay? There is no one right answer for this. Take which one you prefer. Take some time, go through the sample questions on the Cambly website, go through the differences that I've outlined today. Think about, do I prefer speaking face-to-face? Do I prefer speaking to a computer? How good is my handwriting? Handwriting is a huge issue. If I can't read your answer, I can't give you a good mark. So in that case, it's better to go for Toefl, where everything is typed. Another important thing to remember, and another reason why it doesn't matter whether you choose Toefl or IELTS, is because on Cambly, you have tutors who are experts in both of these fields, okay? People who have taught hundreds of students Toefl, who have got hundreds of IELTS hours IELTS experience. Everyone is available on Cambly. Bir yabancı dil öğrenmen için pratik ve konuşma lazım. Ben mesela İstanbul yaşıyorum. Her zaman native speaker Türkler konuşuyorum. Yavaş yavaş daha iyi konuşabilirim Cambly'de. Tüm eğitmenlerin ana dili İngilizce. Bu kod ile ücretsiz deneyebilirsiniz.